Hello and welcome to the Kaizen Academy podcast. I'm Justin and I'm here with my co-host Cal.
Yo,
I've been thinking about something recently, Cal.
lay it
All
on me.
I've got a theory. And it's a pretty cool theory.
Okay.
I call it the theory of private neighborhoods. So nowadays, like working from home is very common, right? Remote work, big thing now. Basically, everyone's doing it because it was mandatory for a while. I think it still is kind of mandatory, but I think even in a post-COVID world, I think remote work is gonna stay just because people are so used to it now. There's such a huge culture of it. People don't want to go back, and I think companies kind of have to offer that, or at least a lot of companies will offer it. And I think what's the main consideration like you think of when you move somewhere, right? It's how close am I to work? I think that's the primary consideration. Would you agree, Cal?
Yes, definitely.
But what happens when we remove that primary consideration? What if remote work is the go now and that's no longer the thing? Where would you move to?
Family,
Family?
back home,
Back home?
my friends,
Friends?
where the gang is. Yeah.
Where the gang is? And that's
Exactly.
what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think naturally, as remote work kind of takes hold and becomes more of a thing, whenever people start thinking about moving, they'll just naturally congregate to where their family is or where their friends is. And I'm thinking maybe in a few years when I start thinking about buying my forever home or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe I'll do this in a more conscious way. I'll start trying to coordinate with my friends and family. Maybe we'll just find like a nice like neighborhood like out where it's like super cheap out west somewhere where there's like very new developments, and we just buy
so
up the
cheap.
whole neighborhood, right? And then whenever someone wants to move somewhere, I'll just shill it really hard. Like, you got to move here, you got to move here. Because how awesome would that be? You've got
Yes.
like a very nice, I guess, almost tribal community. Like back in the day when everyone lived in tribes, right? I think it was
Yeah.
very healthy because
Yes.
you had your cousins and stuff all around. Like, you really got to know your neighborhood. Nowadays, I feel like you kind of miss that.
There's an alienation.
There's an alienation. I love that. Your social network is spread across a very far distance.
Yeah.
I think it's very good for like your kids and stuff if you have a very close knit community in your local vicinity. And I think of all of the cool things you could do, right? You could set up like your private gym with your friends. You could just build a big granny flat in
Yeah.
someone's house. Everyone chips in for it.
Yeah.
You set up like swipe cards and everything, and then you've got your private gym, private 24-hour gym with your friends. And then everyone just goes there. It's like, oh, you see your friends or whatever.
Yeah.
I reckon
I
you
think-
can set up co-working spaces. You
Oh,
go,
yes.
you rent a big office, share it with like 30 friends. Hey, people come in. We're all in different companies, but we just happen to be working in this co-working space. What do you reckon, bro?
That's fire, bro. I mean, a lot of it is just like things that we used to say when we were a lot younger. It's like, remember when we were so young? Back in high school, we're gonna build a gym. We're gonna make it like we're gonna build like a massive warehouse gym, and it's gonna be only for the boys. And we're gonna have all the equipment that we like, not the equipment that these commercial gyms have. Or like we're gonna have
Treadmills?
this and that.
Gross.
Yeah. Cardio, gross. Staying healthy, yuck. No, I love it. I love it so much. I that's an interesting like idea, right? An interesting, I think, a conversation that is stirring around. I feel like out there, a lot of people are talking about these days. Just like we've been so driven by the limitations of how work has been, I guess, set up, how it is that you go to work and live around work, and yeah, from that there is huge alienation, right? So many people living in these big cities, which I will admit I was very interested in at first. I was like, oh, what is it like to live in a big city, right? But I so very much cherish that like community element, like having the support of your friends and family there when you need them. So when you're in a time of crisis, when you need help, right, you have people to reach out to. Like I do have like underlying health conditions, so like when moving out here and being a bit alone, there was definitely like a bit of an anxiety. So when I do like pass out or something, or if I do run into an issue, like there was a bit of an anxiety, like, oh, who do I reach out to, right? Having a housemate is really important. Was really helpful for me. But yeah, I see, like, I mean, the other thing that I'd never had was just like a big family, right? Just like uncles and aunties, right? And I've always been really like I guess a bit jealous of like some of my friends who had that, and I think that there is just something so healthy about having your uncles, your aunties, and your cousins, and this that, and just having everyone around, and yeah, it's just I think it's beautiful. I'm so for it, man. I don't know. We say it as a joke, but
I think it's happening, bro.
it's happening. Eh? It's like serious. Like we used to say, like, "Oh, let's buy a big house. Let's all move in together and like live together or something like that," right? As a joke, but it's like, oh, maybe with these crazy housing prices,
Maybe that's the go.
Yeah, maybe it's the go. But no, for sure, man. Far out.
I
Moving
feel
in
like
with everyone
these
else.
are our prime. We're getting to the age where, like, okay, the world is starting to become our oyster. We're entering the prime
Yes.
career, like, years of our lives, like 25 to like 45 maybe, where we can kind of shape the world. So I think these possibilities start like popping up. All these ideas from childhood that we
Yeah.
picked up. It's like
Yeah.
now I feel like it's so deeply embedded, but now we actually kind of have a bit of power to kind of try make it happen.
Yeah.
But
There's the means to it. I think that there should be an attitude. Nonetheless, I think there should be like an attitude shift. It's like making the most of this whole work from home normalcy, where it's like, yeah, we have that opportunity. Why move out to the big city? Like, why move so close, right? If I have to work, or if I have to come to the office once in a while, okay, cool. But like, if I don't have to all the time, like, yeah, I'd love to be around friends. I'd love to be around the people that I love and that mean the most to me. And what's life, right? You know what I mean? Like, if not that.
straight up,
Yo, banger. Okay.
banger. Someone write that down. James.
I just copied that shit.
Our-
I just
our
copied that shit
editor.
off Instagram, bro.
All right.
That is
well,
not an original thought. I apologize.
And I think that kind of leads it well into our topic for today, which is how to succeed in a turbulent world. All right, there's all these big changes I feel that are happening in the world, and a lot of opportunity as well, but also like a lot of dangers, right? Because if a lot of things are changing, you got to stay on your toes.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about how we have a bit of a discussion about how we can kind of try think about navigating these very new waters.
Yes.
But first, if you have been watching the podcast for a while, subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. We're also available on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast platform you're using. But yeah, let's kind of set the precedent or set the basis of this cow, which is, I think the world is entering a very turbulent time. We're kind of seeing all of these things like the fall of tech giants, right? Facebook getting hammered. I feel like for a long time we were thinking they were too big to fail.
Yeah.
Or they're getting hammered right now.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm not up to speed with a lot of this stuff. I thought they opened the metaverse and that was like their next chapter, and like everyone was cool with that. Or I guess
That's a hard pivot because their old business is failing, right? Facebook, Instagram, Facebook especially, Instagram starting to lose like traction to TikTok and stuff.
Yeah.
But like most of their revenue comes from ads. And recently, Apple did this thing where tracking your data on the iPhone is opt-in, not opt-out.
Yes.
So-
They always ask anytime I recently got a new iPhone, download any new apps. It's like, do you want to allow them to track, right? And it's pretty much no. You ask them, no, do not track my stuff.
And I think Android did the same thing. Google did the same thing. I'm not sure, but Facebook heavily relies on that for their business. So they're taking a beating. Their stock price has dropped like crazy. So that's why they're doing that hard pivot. We've also got like the extreme inflation because like turns out the US how do they solve any problem?
Yeah.
They just print more money.
Oh, okay.
And that's how they solve it, right? But as a result, it kind of makes everyone's currencies kind of very like I didn't study economics. This is kind of I'm talking out of my butt, but they're the reserve currency of the world, right? So when they do this, it's pretty bad for everyone else. It just causes inflation everywhere. There's new industries like popping up where like there's a lot of potential, right? Like 10, 20 years ago, you didn't have YouTubers. I guess you did have YouTubers 10 years ago, but huge content creators, influencers, right? It's such a big part of not a mainstream thing. It's such a big part of our culture now, but I would say arguably they're where all of our attention is nowadays, right? We don't really look at traditional media as much. I personally don't look at traditional media at all. I'm all about that new media. You know, I watch YouTube.
Twitch streamers.
Twitch streamers. I get my news from Reddit.
Yep.
Not great, but
I'm
it's
glad
where I get
you
it.
got a disclaimer. Not the best thing that I do.
Yeah, no, I hate Reddit. I don't know why. I don't know why I get my news from it, but it's a love-hate relationship. And also, like, again, like COVID really like shook things up, right? Remote work is such a big thing now. I think a lot of culture has shifted in terms of how people live their lives. I've moved to the CBD in Sydney, and I can tell you, it's like not popping. It's like a lot more dead than
Yeah.
like it was when I first started going to uni. And like
Yeah.
every weekend, whenever people go out, is head to the city, go have a night out in the city.
Yeah.
And then it would just be filled up, like the streets would be filled up with people. Nowadays, not so much. It's still kind of busy, but I've been going to like more the suburbs, like the suburban nightlife areas, like
Okay.
Strathfield, Burwood, even Eastwood,
Yeah.
Newtown, and
Yeah.
those places are popping. I think nowadays, when people want to have a night out, a big possibility is they'll just have it in their local area.
Yeah.
So I think big culture shifts in that regard, but there's also like another high level of turbulence in the world, which is stuff that's bit scarier.
Geopolitics. Foreign policy.
Geopolitics. Yeah, like we've got the end of the US hyperpower, right? For like the longest time, the US is just by far the strongest country like in the world, and they were kind of acting as the world police, like for better or worse. But now that's kind of changing, right? The US is no longer leagues ahead of everyone else. You've got China, who's like hot on their heels. You've got India, which is like coming up as well. And
India's superpower.
sorry,
India's superpower 2020, 24, something like that.
that's a prediction.
I don't know. I always see
they-
those kind of hot takes.
Yeah, well, but they're coming up, right? They've got
Yes.
so many smart people there. They've got a huge population that's
100%.
moving out of poverty into like into a, I don't know if it's the politically correct term anymore, but becoming a developed country. I don't know if that's the go.
Yeah.
But we've got all of this like unrest between countries now because it's no longer the US can't bully people anymore. There's actual people are actually fighting back a little bit. So we've got like Russia and Ukraine right now. That's very scary. I don't know what's the go there.
Yeah.
We've got Taiwan, which is a very contentious issue.
Yeah.
So a lot of things that are shaking up the world at the high level. And we've got another big one, which is global warming, right? Like that's going to hit.
The biggest.
And I don't know like what's the go there, but
Yeah. How are we going to be prepared for that, man?
yeah,
That sucks.
that does suck. And I think a
To
lot of
keep it
times
simple.
we like these issues feel so big that we like it feels hopeless, right? But we're not going to be talking about that this episode.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about approaching it from a much more individual level of there's very turbulent times coming in the future. How can you protect yourself, or how can you succeed in this world
Yeah.
that we've kind of proposed? Hopefully it's like everything's chill, but
Yeah.
I feel like we're going to go through a pretty turbulent period, for
Yes.
better or worse.
Yeah.
Turbulent, not necessarily in a negative way. Turbulent, just as in a lot of changes, and the things that previously may have been the default may not. You maybe want to consider other options. But any thoughts on just this kind of context as well before we move into our actual discussion points?
This is very interesting, and I think it's something that we tend to not. I don't know. It's another thing that we kind of have blinders on sometimes. That you think it's like we just go, oh, I guess so. Like, kind of these things happen because we do feel like it's out of our control, and I think at face value, a lot of times when I do think about it, my default is, oh no, it doesn't affect me. Like, I'm so nonchalant about it sometimes, right? But I feel like deep down there is an impact on everyone somewhere in there that kind of messes with you when you're like, okay, the fabric of what I understand society to be is kind of falling apart. What I grew up in is kind of falling apart, and it's kind of scary. And like you said, how do I navigate these trying times, right? How do I navigate like when things are just so confusing? And there is another element of alienation, I'd say. Like, it's just like, oh my gosh, how do I process these emotions, or how do most of us just ignore it, I guess, right? But yeah, maybe in this case, it's good to recognize what it's making me feel, what it's making us feel like, and kind of like addressing that to make sure that we're not really, I guess we're not too negatively impacted, so that we can succeed through these times, right? I've never thought about it too deeply. Like I said, like I think for the most, or for speaking for a lot of people here, but for me personally, I've always just like, oh, yeah, it is what it is, kind of thing. You always feel like your efforts are futile
Mm.
sometimes in a lot of these bigger issues. Like, oh my god, what can I do, right? And I'm sure that that is definitely a little bit of like a cop out way of thinking it, but I'm sure that that is a sentiment that a lot of people share, like at first when they hear about so many of these like larger than life type issues.
Definitely, definitely. Then I guess first thing I want to talk about is just in terms of career. So with the assumption that things are going to be very turbulent, right?
Yes.
I'm kind of thinking that like certifications or qualifications are going to matter a lot less than hard skills in the coming years, right? And I feel like we're already seeing that. I feel like there's a bigger sentiment now of you don't need to go to university or college.
Yes.
You don't need to like have these go through these gatekeepers to kind of get work done. I feel like there's a bit more of a sentiment of you can just go and do things, right? There's like coding boot camps that like kind of popped up for a while. I think they're not as popular nowadays,
Hmm.
but to become like a software engineer, say, you don't have to go to uni. I do think it's a good option, and
Yes.
like it's my preferred option. I did go to uni,
Yeah.
but I think as things change more quickly, like you can't rely on like I think companies in general won't rely on qualifications as much anymore. I think they'll start testing in other ways to find like candidates. But what's your take on this? Do you feel
Interesting.
like this is just a general feeling I've got? I
Mm.
haven't got too much proof to back it up, but
Yeah.
I feel like nowadays a lot of things are more permissionless, right? You like say you want to be
Oh,
a content creator, right? You just
yeah.
like making films and stuff. Nowadays, you can just make the film, post it on YouTube, and make a living off of that. Or
Yeah.
like music, same thing. Whereas back in the day, you need to get through these gatekeepers. You needed
Yeah.
qualifications. You needed like a bit of a pedigree to get into like Hollywood or like the music industry or like
Mm.
or this that, right? But now I
Yeah.
know I get the general feeling that no, as long as you've got the skills,
Yeah.
you can kind of make it, and that kind of seems like the general trend that
Yeah.
I'm seeing.
Yeah. So I guess yeah, the bar of entry into many things are kind of like falling a little bit.
Mm,
Maybe it was never the best thing. It was never the best thing to like have these like jobs that were, like you said, like gate kept by degrees, right? It feels, and I think that was kind of the sentiment with a lot of people who immediately graduate and you're like, oh, this is the piece of paper. Oh man,
mm,
really? Like it doesn't feel that worth like, or at that it doesn't feel like it holds as much worth in the grand scheme of everything, because it's like, I don't know. I feel like I picked up a lot of these skills outside of uni, or a lot of what uh, allowed me to succeed and get into this job or get through this interview wasn't even the things that uni taught me. It was just like they just have that first line. It's, oh, I need you to have a bachelor's degree in this, a bachelor's degree in that, and it does feel a bit traditional,
mm,
slightly outdated. And the
mm,
crazy thing, I think I was looking at a couple like internship listings for my little sister as she's kind of going through that phase, right? And there were certain places, especially big names as well, like, you know, like the Big Fang and things like that. Some of them, some of the listings just straight up said, okay, degree or some equivalent industry training.
mm,
So you don't really need like a certificate. You can go through and find hopefully more, I guess, like slightly easier means to get like those hard skills. I'm not sure what we're referring to exactly, but in general, like in this case, it was computer science, right? I'm sure you can develop a lot of those skills outside of uni, even though it is, I think, yeah, our preferred method. We'd definitely recommend going to uni. I think there's a lot of structure and it makes it a lot easier, but right, the bar of entry has decreased a little bit, and that was interesting to see. I was like, oh man, like that is new, because it has always been like whatever job, even though it was like an entry level desk job, and it would be like, oh, I need you to have a
just
bachelor's
paper
in a
pusher. You need
bro,
a bachelor in like
exactly.
business to like get coffee.
ridiculous, right? But now it's like,
Mm.
oh no, some kind of industry equivalent training and some kind of recognized industry equivalent training, and you're good, right? You're good. You're ready to
Mm.
go. Might not be across the board, and that's just kind of like the anecdotal experience that I've seen so far. But
Mm.
yeah, at least hopefully that's a shift in the for the bigger things as well, because that would be nice, to allow people to have similar opportunities in that sense.
Mm. And we're definitely generalizing, right? Because we work in field which is, I guess, relatively newer than certain other industries, like just say the med industry, right?
Yeah.
You kind of want your doctors to have degrees and have done all of that training. So
Yeah.
I get the sense that it's not really older industries that are kind of changing the requirements too much.
Yeah.
I think older industries kind of still want whatever they've always wanted. I think it's the new emerging industries that tend to have more of this modern culture, I guess, of, nah, we don't care about your qualifications. We care about what you've done and what you can do.
Mm. Do you think there's like a bit of like the type of work is quite important in this conversation as well?
I think
Like,
so.
can
Yeah.
can you see a future where it's like, okay, my doctor has done this and he can do this, no degree though? You think like,
Maybe in the far future.
given
I
enough
feel-
time, yeah. So like, let's just like run it all the way to the
Run it down like
as
50
far as
years.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe like if they develop like an assessment process, like good enough where you can actually properly assess a doctor's
Abilities,
actual
yeah.
technical skill. Like, I don't know, they jump in a VR headset
Yeah.
and then like they actually do surgery, and then there's like an exam. I think potentially in the far future, but maybe like they'll have like some VR headset they can put on, and then they'll do an assessment, and then it's like, okay, you're good enough to become a surgeon or whatever.
Yeah, it'd
But
have to be quite a comprehensive test, right? And I guess
Mm.
when it comes to like skills and professions like doctors, man, how long is that? That's like a 6-month test where you just go through and show me that you can do every single thing in the textbook that you would have learned in a degree or something like that. Very rigorous. Not sure if that's the best way forward, but I see where you're coming from. I guess there is a potential way. There's always a future for something like that, where it's just like, yeah, man, degrees are overrated, man. I feel like we've heard that for a while, but it was more just like I never needed the degree anyways, or degree's kind of useless or whatever like that.
And just to put a final like point on this, and I think I can speak for both of us.
Yeah.
And it's that we're not saying degrees are like useless. Don't go to uni, because we're very much for uni. But I think it's the way you think about it. Don't. I think it used to be like, it's a hard requirement and it's the only path. I think nowadays the way you should think about it is uni is just a tool that you can use to learn and build the skills that are necessary, right?
Yes.
So because there are very smart people teaching it, there's a lot of structure there. It's been proven to like work. They've improved on the process for like a long time, and it's a good way to pick up the skills necessary for whatever career that you want. But if you take a look at that and you say, you know what, that's not the deal that I want. Maybe you want to go on an alternate path. That's completely fine as well. So all we're saying is that we think qualifications are becoming less of a necessity, and there are a lot more alternate paths.
100%. Like
forward.
so many. And did you ever feel like so many times you would get to say, when we were looking at internships and say grad programs towards the end of your degree, you hadn't technically graduated, right? You hadn't technically gotten your paper yet, but you'd still apply for these places, even though they said, okay, I need you to have the degree in this. So it's like the technicality of it, it's like it's lost, right? Or the value of that technicality is lost, because it's like, I don't even have my paper, but it doesn't matter, right? Because realistically, you wanted that paper because that paper proved to you that I had done all these things, or I had learned many of these things, and I've already done it anyways, and I've learned it anyways. I have a transcript for that, right? And that's the more important part. And yeah, for sure, it's like the experience that you gather through there, which is obvious. It makes, when it comes out of my mouth, it's like, duh, like what the heck am I talking about, right? But yeah, like there was always so much pressure for me to get me that piece of paper, put it up on the wall, and now I'm a certified engineer or something like that, right? But it's more so, okay, I've learned all the skills necessary to say now learn the industry relevant skills as I go through my job. But besides that, like the piece of paper is just there, like, oh my God, how many times have like all of our friends graduated and it's like a snap of like, look at this $50,000 piece of paper that I paid for, or something nonsense, like something ridiculous like that.
Some overdone joke.
yeah. I see it everywhere, but I think people are coming around.
It rings true
industry-wise as
because
well.
it's like then I guess with this premise set, that, okay, we kind of think qualifications matter less. What do you value now? Value hard skills. So I think the yardstick that you should measure your progress, your career progress, or just your progress in general is, have I learned a lot recently? And I think this is a good mindset to have. It's always been a good mindset to have, but I think it's even more important when things are a bit more open like this, right? I think you should value, actually, if you have two options, right? It's like, I can go back to uni and like learn whatever and then get my master's degree, or no, I can just go online and learn whatever I need right now and try to get real world experience. I think that's probably a lot more valuable. And in general, like as you're thinking about your career, just think, when you think about progression, I think less about titles, think less about qualifications, and think more about, okay, what's a hard skill that I can learn this year? Like when I set my New Year's resolution, say, it's like more of a mindset shift. It's not, this year I'm gonna make, I don't know, partner. It's instead, this year I'm gonna learn how to do amazing presentations. I'm gonna really work on my soft skills. Maybe you're in sales, and like I'm really gonna work on this particular aspect of my
being able to present, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
interesting. But like when you mentioned, like, say, because at the beginning when you opened with this, you were like, hard skills are more important. Could you maybe ground that for me and just like throw out a couple? It might not be relevant to everyone like listening, but just to kind of give me a bit of context in this case.
So when I say hard skills, I just meant skills, concrete skills. So like, I even considered traditional soft skills in there.
More hard
like
skills, yeah.
Presenting, management. So I shouldn't have said that. I just should have just said skills in general. Like I think as long as it's a concrete, non-fluff skill, and it's something that's actually solving problems, I think it's something very valuable to learn. Right, writing is a skill. I keep wanting to say hard skill, but writing is a skill, speaking is a skill, learning to work in a team is a skill, programming is a skill, being able to, like, maths is a skill, right?
Yeah.
So there's things that are very concrete, that are very measurable, I guess, and I would say value those a lot more than, I don't know, getting your 10 qualifications from, I don't know, your industry, whatever's.
Right. Can I just say something? This is really interesting because I've had a similar conversation with a couple of my mentors about this, and I guess in my line of work, I had already taken that step away from, not really, like I'm still doing certifications and that's one element to it, but as you progress through a career in, say, sales, and you progress through a career in solution engineering, right? A lot of it is being able to communicate solutions. Okay, I understand this back to front, but can I actually communicate this to the client or something like that, right? And so say 5 years deep into a career like mine, you look back and a lot of the things that you've developed for yourself would be traditionally soft skills. Let me just say that, like the ability to present, your ability to manage your relationships with clients and things, so on and so forth, right? And in that sense, I remember talking to him and we shared like just this anxiety of like, oh, that doesn't feel, like after 5 years, like what have I done for myself? I can talk to people better. And it's like, it's a bit scary, right? Whereas when we were discussing that, we're like, I guess so with certifications, it gives you a bit more security, or it gives you a bit more like comfort, like, oh, look at this piece of paper. You know what I mean? Like it's more recognized in that sense. And so I was just wondering what you thought about that, because that's something that I've been like, that's been dwelling on in the back of my mind, because I'm not a developer anymore, and so I'm not sitting in the back just coding. And obviously, I still have to learn a lot of technicality and a lot of like reading white papers and being able to architect a solution in whatever architecture it is that I ended up going into ended up going into. But like, it's not as, it doesn't feel as concrete like the things that I traditionally think about when you brought up, say, skills. It's like, oh, Python or JavaScript. I'm proficient in this and proficient in that. So I don't know. What would you think about that? Just
100% here, and it's like, I know what you mean, because like, I've worked 5 years and then I don't have anything to show for it per se. Like I don't have any like milestones or whatever. Like I guess it feels nice to have like, I've made it through 5 promotions. I've done 10 certificates. Maybe I've got my master's degree. There's a kind of a list that you kind of list of qualifications that you can look at that kind of makes you feel safe. But I feel like that might be more of a product of, we just came up in a time where qualifications were kind of the go-to thing that people look at when they try to suss out how good you are at what you do.
Yeah.
And I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to say here, is that I think it's more useful if you shift that mindset of looking at your achievements through these external outcomes, these external qualifications, and or not outcomes, external qualifications, and more at things that you've actually done, like the skills you've built, the projects you've delivered, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay, I see where you're coming from, and definitely that's why I prefaced it. Like, I think when we spoke about it, we definitely acknowledge, hey, this is a bit of an anxiety. It's a bit of like the negative Nancy speaking. You know, we're seeing things the half, you know, the glass half empty kind of like situation, and so yeah, I wasn't really sure, and I'm still early career, so I'm sure like someone deeper into the career, having gone through it, they would probably recognize the value and see that value recognized, so it's less of an anxiety for them as it is for me. Like, I think, yeah, growing up and kind of going through school around the times that we did, it's the qualifications are quite, or still held a lot of like prestige and a lot of value still. But yeah, that it's interesting because I guess that should allow me to sleep a little easier at night these days. It's just like, because my career is more so like, you know, developing those kind of soft skills. Okay, can I present well, or like my presentation skills? Like, can I pull out a banger presentation for the clients within like a day or something like that, and all that good stuff.
And again, the same. I'm going to do the same spiel that I just said about uni, right? These external qualifications can be useful as a way to externally validate your skill. It's like, and then, or like you can use it as a syllabus, right? It's a tool for you to use to expand your skill. But I guess what I'm just trying to say is use the skill is the yardstick, or like the concrete deliverables, like things that you've done should be the yardstick you measure yourself by instead of qualifications. Because if you're on a new frontier, say you're like just in this very innovative, like this new industry just popped up, super innovative.
Yeah.
If your yardstick that you constantly measure yourself by is always a qualification, those things tend to take a while to pop up, right? It's like an industry needs to be around for a while. People start creating teaching content. People start developing these certifications for it.
Yes.
And by definition, you're always going to be behind. You're never going to be, if you focus too much on that, you're never going to be working on the frontier.
No.
Which is why I'm just trying to push that. I think focusing on skills is important, because skills are always transferable, even if it's a new industry, right? You will always see concepts from adjacent fields pop up.
Yeah. Oh, that's fire, dude. Like, when you're working on quite literally the frontier of things and innovating that hard. Yeah. If on the flip side, if there is a certificate for it, then you're already like 10 steps behind. You're like, you're too late, buddy.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it. I see where you're coming from.
And like, again, this whole whole premise of this podcast episode is, I think a lot of new frontiers are going to be opening up, and there's a lot of opportunity there. You got to keep your eyes open, because okay, I'm going to go on a bit of a property rant right now.
Send it.
Because I think a lot of these older industries, all of the alpha is it's new word I learned from my friend who does trading. all the nice like potential for like profit, right? Potential to like get value has already been sucked out of it. It's like, it's perfectly, if you're in a very old industry, your work is going to be perfectly priced at market price. Because everyone's already in on it. Like, people know how much a doctor makes, whereas but if you're on the frontier, there is potential for huge leverage, huge payouts, right? Because you're on the frontier. It's like you were back in the day when you were like, there was the gold rush. You were like out there, like making a name for yourself, whatever. I don't know. I'm making shit up. Yeah. But I just get the general sense there's a lot more frontiers that are going to be popping up in the near future.
Yeah. Kind of like when the .com, I mean, when the internet kind of rolled through, right?
That was a frontier.
Yeah, and we just didn't, having things come in, things being so brand new, it's just hard to go, okay, this guy deserves this much, or this profession in this field deserves this much, or something like that, right? So you're saying, when you're working on the front line, it's high risk, high reward, baby. Is that
Exactly.
kind of okay?
Exactly.
I get
That's
you.
exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess the next point that I wanted to talk about is very related, and it's that it's related to a concept that's very near to my heart, which is,
Yeah.
again, the half-life of knowledge, right? It's that certain pieces of knowledge are more universal. They stick around for longer, and they're relevant for longer.
Yeah.
So, for example, again, I don't know, like knowing fundamental mathematics, math's never really going to change.
Yeah.
It's going to pop up like all throughout your life, but
Yeah.
knowing the hottest like new accounting software,
The next CRM,
the next
whatever it
CRM,
is.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it might be popping for the next like 5 years, but eventually there's going to be a new popping CRM that's even
Yeah.
hotter.
Yeah.
So that knowledge, the skills you've built on that platform, have a low half-life.
Yes.
They decay much faster than things that have very long half-lives that are more fundamental. So again, when you go into a new frontier, a very tumultuous time period, in general, I think the decay just happens faster. Like you have all of these new things pop up, right? So your like day-to-day skills might get outdated like more quickly. How like well you use specific software, how well you know a specific programming language.
Yeah.
There will be new things popping up every day because by definition it's like things are changing just very quickly. But if you focus on the fundamentals, right, like things like just foundational principles, if you think about things from first principles, if you read and like learn about ideas that have been around for long periods of time, then I think it's more likely that these things transfer over to these new fields than whatever, right? Like again, using another example, it's just say what is it? Search engine optimization, SEO. That's the word.
Yes.
I think that's a very low half-life skill, right? Because it's very dependent on the idea of search engines being the predominant thing, and they've only been around for like, I don't know, like how long has Google been around? 20, 30 years?
I wouldn't know.
And
Something like
they constantly change the algorithm and stuff. So one tip that you learn today may not be relevant in like 2 months. So I'd say that's something where it's like it's got a very low half-life. You've got to keep constantly like update your knowledge in terms of that. But I guess if you think of it more in terms of incentives, right? Incentives is a very foundational, universal concept. It's okay, like what is Google's incentives? Like how do they like what are their goals, and how do I align myself as a marketer to their goals? That's a much more foundational way, a much more first principles way of thinking about it, rather than just reading like top 20 tips on how to do SEO better in January 2022.
All right.
But yeah, any thoughts on that, Cal? I guess like what are the first principles, I guess, in your field? Like what are the things, just as an example to I guess our listeners, what are the things to help them spot, I guess, the things that have low half-lives in their field versus things that have long half-lives in their field?
Yeah. No.
What I guess you're in software, in solutions engineering.
Yeah. With my line of work, with solution engineering and kind of like being a sales engineer, I guess there is a huge emphasis on like my grad program. Just like a bit of context for everyone, is just like with the grad program, a lot of the training is so technical, right? The engineering side of it is relentless. Do I know this back to front? Do I know the spec sheets back to front? Can I speak about any of these things? If you ask me about this one specific feature on this one router or this one switch that we're selling, can I somehow pull it up, or at least know where to look, right? So yes, there is that side of it, but there is a huge emphasis on, and we have like all of these classes, these like really like in detail, comprehensive classes on how to speak, how to ask questions, right? How to listen, like how to listen to the client, how to ask questions effectively so that you can gather insights as fast as you can in the shortest amount of time possible, how to build funnels and or questioning funnels so that you can effectively walk through, say, issues that your client is speaking to you about, right? So it's a huge part of the learning process is learning how to be social or learning how to be charismatic or to some degree, or just being able to speak and hold conversations and handle objections and all those soft skills that you don't necessarily think about learning normally. You kind of think, oh, I just pick this up as I go kind of thing. But yeah, like I feel like with my job and what I'm doing right now, a huge part of it, and probably the skills that I have learned with the greatest half-life is that, right? Because I feel like that translates everywhere. I mean, it kind of I translated into that job from teaching. Man,
Very
let's talk about
universal.
teaching for a second, right? Because
Yeah.
like teaching, it's like what's the half, man, when we talk about the half-life of teaching, that is critical, right? Because the syllabus changes quite often, right? And what you teach here is not relevant what if you move to Melbourne and that syllabus is completely different. So the content itself tends to take the backseat a lot of times when you look at, say, tutors or teachers and things like that. And what's most valued, what say they're always looking for in an interview, or I'm always looking for an interview when I'm looking at new teachers, right, is pretty much their ability to communicate ideas in a simple way, right? An ability to break it down in their minds and be transparent with how they think through complex concepts, and more of like those soft skills that can then be reapplied, right? Because then I can always teach you a technical thing. I can always get you to get across this new physics concept, right? But it's okay, now that you understand it, how do you go through or go about breaking that down and kind of like spoon feeding that to your students, right? So it's the same thing. Like those were the skills that I thought I leveraged the most, right? Because I feel like they are some of the skills that I've picked up with the greatest half-life over the last few years, and I've transferred them into my professional life, and being able to break down ideas or being able to understand these complex concepts or complex solutions, and then being able to communicate that back to a client who's not too familiar with the inner workings of whatever it is that you're trying to share with them. That's huge. That's just like being a teacher, right? And there's definitely I've definitely seen a lot of like, oh my god, like it's very similar, and that's why I'm in this line of work. It's very similar to what I used to do. It's very similar to what I'm currently doing in my classes when I teach my students, right? To not be like patronizing, but it is very similar in that sense. And so honestly, for me, I'd say those soft skills, largest half-life, like might be like largest period, you know, because it kind of transcends. It allows you to just be a better, more whole person in every element of your life. Like I remember the other day I was having like a deep conversation with a friend, and I was using skills that I had learned, like skills that I had learned in class, to talk to clients and effectively say catch information and retain it and be able to like kind of play it back to them to make sure that you're both on the same page. We're having a deep conversation. I was like, oh, I can't hold all of this content. I pulled out a notepad and I just started writing dots. I was like, okay, I need to share this with him later down the line. Okay, he touched on this. This is really important. And I was like, bro, what am I doing right now? And I didn't, and you know, like I'm not saying like, oh, we're having like a very emotional talk, and I'm not turning it into like a client. I'm not trying to sell him anything, but I was just thought those skills, right, was so important to allow me to hold a conversation with him, right, to then give him a more whole experience, I guess, as we were discussing through these very heavy topics. And I was like, man, I was so proud of myself. Bro, this is in class, right? It was,
Sure, I understand.
oh, sorry, my Siri went off. But this is something that I learned in class, right? And to be able to apply that everywhere, and sometimes even when I speak to a lot of my friends, or the way that I guess you speak to clients is, or that you ask questions about clients is, you tend to build a couple funnels. So you start broad and you slowly build in, and you kind of funnel in, you get more specific, and then you turn around, you kind of see that in your everyday life. You kind of talk to a couple people, and you're like, oh, you're moving out? Like, okay, let's pry a little deeper. Let's go a little deeper there, a little deeper. Okay, well, at the end of this conversation, let's open a new funnel. Let's start another wide one, right? And then slowly build, and you're like, oh my God, I've turned like my life, like my social life, into like a bit of a science because of like the things that we've learned in this grad program. But I think it's super, super valuable because you see that in, say, the sales side of things. But then you see so many of the people in my line of work moving to consultancy, because what's consultancy? Very similar, right? It's being able to break these solutions down and show the clients, hey, yeah, we can do this for you. We can help you out with this scenario, right? Whatever it is that you guys are helping them with. And there is just so much overlap with so many different careers that I feel like the second you learn these I guess traditionally soft skills, they just they're just everywhere. They permeate your whole life, right? Wherever you go, and it feels like that's. At first, we were like I mentioned earlier. I had a bit of an anxiety of just like when you're a lot younger, you just don't have. You have an anxiety that people will be like, "Show me what you're worth. Show me your certifications. Show me your qualifications." Right? And when I talk about these soft skills, like there is no qualification. Like, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't show you anything.
I'm a level 10 presenter.
Yeah, right. So I can whip out a presentation real quick, right? But it's like who's gonna externally validate that for me? But like, kind of seeing how, I guess, how pervasive those skills have become in my life, it gives me a bit of confidence, a lot more confidence that like, if I do want to pivot elsewhere, I really do have a solid foundation that I can carry, like some seriously universal skills that I can carry wherever it is that I want to go. It might be tough, but yeah, still, it's definitely I guess what is like motivating. It makes me hopeful to see that.
I love that, Cal. And again, I think another thing that we can kind of tack on, I just kind of thought about it as you were like, I think you were hinting at it, and it's that things with long half-lives tend to also be very transferable to like other areas. So I guess like for you, the kind of social skills are foundational to, I think, our species, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're very social animals, and it will permeate. Having good soft skills permeates throughout your whole life. Very useful. We will never get outdated.
Yes.
So I guess for you as a solutions engineer, things that have very low half-lives are things like spec sheets, right? You can sit there and spend like however long memorizing these spec sheets.
Yes.
And this engineering team could make a new product. All right, we've updated it. You got to memorize this now. So it's kind of not the go to just sit there and memorize it. It's not about having an encyclopedic knowledge of these things. It's more about those soft skills that you were talking about that are very
100%.
transferable. And I would say soft skills is probably the best skill you can build. If you don't know what skill to build, go build your soft skills, because it will be useful no matter what path you take. It's like
so many times like when we got into, I think, as the adult world, and you get into like a job and you look out there and you look at the people who are successful, you're like, man, that guy can talk, man. You know what I mean? You're like, and the fact that he can talk has gotten him so far, like to be able to have so much charisma, to be able to be so social and kind of like network well and do all those things, kind of touch base with everyone, rub shoulders with everyone, and like leave a positive impression, right? All of those things get people so far in these careers. And yeah, there's definitely like the second we left uni, I personally felt like a shift, right? Away from, while you're in uni, like you kind of have your blinders on. You're like, man, let me learn about this freaking whatever, right? This latest and greatest thing that we're researching on. That's so fascinating. That's really awesome. Cool. Awesome. Right. And you think those are the valuable skills that you want to like build up on. And then the second you jump into the industry, it's like things are changing so quickly that like you're just learning from the ground up again. Right. Another universal skill, I think, is the one that we talk about since like day one. And it's just that ability to stay curious and be like constantly learning. Right. Is that not in itself like that universal skill that keeps you going wherever you can? Right. And I think 100%. You can apply that in every single scenario. And I think that's why we were so like, we were so passionate about it. And whenever we taught our students, it's yeah, like this is maths, right? But it's like, I think the energy that you have here, the energy that we can cultivate in this class, I want you to be able to cultivate everywhere, in every element of your life, aspect of your life, right? When you go to your maths tutor, carry that same curiosity, right? When you go to school, carry that same curiosity. And then through uni and wherever it is that you end up in, right? But yeah, I think learning is just another huge one that just like you continue to abstract upwards, and this is just like even more bedrock,
even more fundamental,
exactly, right?
Yeah. But yeah, so I encourage you guys again. A lot of frontiers opening up, a lot of like change in our world. Think about like in your career, like what is more fundamental. So I'm just gonna kind of throw some examples out.
Yeah.
Learning to work with other people, right? And not be a prick. It's like a non-trivial skill. Just like, and it's very easy to learn that. You just like whoever you work with, who do I just dislike interacting with?
This sounds personal.
Yeah, like
no, I'm kidding.
Let's not do what they do, and then I love working with this person. what are they doing right? Like maybe you can even ask them, like, oh, what do you think about this, like consciously or whatever?
Yeah.
Pay attention to how your managers manage things. If your manager is good, copy what they do, bounce ideas off of them. Learning to not be a prick, a very useful skill, something that I am still working on myself. Like presentation skills, being able to communicate effectively, being able to communicate. Like, and when I say that, it's like, again, non-trivial. It's something that I had to learn. It's not being too timid, like, but not being too like brash as well, right? Being the right amount of assertive. You don't. It's horrible being in a meeting where everyone is kind of just dilly-dallying, like no one's directing the conversation. Like, so annoying. But at the same time, you don't want a meeting with everyone trying to shout over each other, right?
Yes.
There's a bit of a dynamic there that you've got to learn to deal with. You got to be able to push the conversation forward when it's getting stuck, and you've got to be able to kind of reel it back when it's getting a bit too heated or off topic or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll speak to a few fundamental things in my field. I'm a software engineer, a machine learning engineer specifically, and things that are more fundamental are kind of mathematics, like algorithms, just logic, right, in general, or like, and even just thinking in terms of what is the fundamental problem I'm trying to solve, right? Let's think backwards from the problem itself. That's a very useful skill, instead of starting from what solution do I want to build. Being able to work in a team, stuff like that.
Yeah. Is that kind of like sorry, I just came across this recently in one of the books. I mean, one of the classes that I've been learning, but it's like what is it? Test driven
And development.
That's right. I had to learn that recently. Whereas like, you write the test before you write your code, right? It's like, okay, what? Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, cool. Yes.
I haven't done it before, like full disclosure, but there are a lot of fanatics that love test-driven development, because I guess it kind of forces you to think about, what is my end goal? What am I trying to do before you actually build the solution to it? But I don't have too much experience there.
Yeah, no, me neither. I just came across it in a theoretical setting, but yeah.
All right, next point I wanted to talk about, Cal, is this mental shortcut that I think a lot of people do, and I certainly do it all the time. I think it's very, I think it's just something in our brains that it just likes to take this shortcut, which is things that haven't happened, or even things that haven't happened in my lifetime can't happen. And it irks me a lot whenever like I talk to people, and it's like, that's kind of the place they're coming from, because I think that's kind of
naive,
how you become the most vulnerable to like tumultuous times, right? To turbulent times, because by definition it's things that are changing, that are new, that is not what you know. And when you close yourself off to those possibilities, I think you expose yourself to a lot of danger, to a lot of
no, being welcome to change is a huge part of growing up. And this is not even no context on anything. It's just like something, a bit of like an introspection that I've had just with myself, right? Like, as you grow up, you're like, oh man, you need to manage how you react to these changes in your life, and how to like regulate those emotions and not be too I guess reactionary to some of these things, be more welcoming, like being more just not like kind of developing or trying your best not to develop or act upon the anxiety too much of like, oh my, just the unknown, and being a bit more welcoming in that sense. In general is just so important, right? Like moving out was a huge thing for me, and it was just like so much chaos. I think there was just so much chaos, but I think because I had the expectation of it, and I kind of welcomed that change, it was a little bit easier. Instead of just going in blind, and then being a bit naive, like, oh, no way this could happen, no way that could happen, right? Always being prepared for what's that quote? It's like being prepared for the worst, but like expecting the best, prepared for the worst, or something like that.
Exactly.
And it's always keeping that in mind. It's like, hey, it can. I like that. I think it's good. It's always a safe way to approach anything, even.
Exactly. And like a perfect example is COVID, right? This thing came out of nowhere and shook the world. And I think a lot of people weren't prepared for it, because the last like pandemic that happened was in 1920s. I certainly wasn't prepared for it. Like, but at the same time, I feel like I think it's a good way to think about things. It's like, how did I think about the world before COVID?
Yes.
And how I think now? It's like, okay, I'm much more aware of how viruses work and everything. And I guess I try to transfer this thinking of, you know what, things can shake up the world. The world can change very drastically, very quickly, and you've got to at least think about these possibilities and think about planning for them. I think a big one is, I get the general sense that people don't think about war very much. Like when I talk to friends and stuff, it's like, war is like a pretty fundamental part of like human history. I hope we've grown out of it, kind of thing, right? As we get more and more technologically developed. But I always still think about, oh, what if war just broke out tomorrow, right? Or like, because things can devolve very quickly. Imagine being someone in the Ukraine right now. You were just chilling, like worried about your day-to-day mundane things, like, oh, get a new job or whatever. And then suddenly all these tensions, right? I don't want to get too political, but like, there's a lot of like Russia, right? That's what I'm going to say.
The elephant in the room. Say it. It's all right.
Like Russia's amassing forces like on their borders. Probably by the time this podcast comes out, something probably will have happened. So I think in general, keeping an open mind to very bad things happening is something that is important. Exactly what you said. My whole point can be summarized by what you said. It's like, something the best, but like prepare for the worst.
Prepare for the worst. You expect the best, but you prepare for the worst, right? So that you have the facilities to I guess get through the tough times if it turns out to be tough, right? But you want to always stay positive. I do still believe that your mentality should be positive. You should always, I think that's the expecting the best part, because generally speaking, now my brain just defaults into like exams and stuff like that, because that's what I've been going through. That's the scope of my life, and the most difficult my life has been is just like, oh my god, these exams have been intense. But it's like, you expect a pass, you expect to do amazing, but I need to prepare for the worst, meaning if I do fail, I have a plan of action in terms of how I'm gonna go about taking the exam again or studying further and things like that. I like that approach. It's a nice way to kind of keep a nice balance of both things, right?
Yes, that's what I dislike. Like I think that's the thing that irks me. It's like, I'm not even gonna think about this or like play around with the thought at all of how should I prepare for this scenario, because it's just not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
I might take it too far. Like whenever I watch zombie shows with friends, I'm like, what would you do here? And then like they'll say like whatever, but this would happen, and then that would happen, and then that would happen. I'm horrible. Like if you watch like apocalypse movies with me, you're in for a lot of thinking.
Note to self: never watch this stuff with Justin. Okay, interesting. Got it. Noted.
But I really like thinking about these types of things, and I think it's important, right? Because
there's some utility, 100%, some utility in being prepared like that, and I think.
And it stretches your brain. It stretches your mind in terms of how to like solve problems that are very outside of the normal scope of what we deal with.
Yeah. I do send my condolences to Kerry and Jackie.
My four housemates. Yeah.
Your housemates. He's just trying to relax. He's like, bro, today was tiring. Throwing all of us dead. What are you gonna do now, Jack? What are you gonna do now? You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't quarantine everyone. This is gonna happen. That's gonna happen.
That was exactly me.
Oh, poor Jack. Poor Kerry. No, that's hilarious.
Leading into the next point I wanted to talk about. This is a bit of a hot take by me.
Okay.
Is the idea of a life runway and your asset allocation, right? We're getting to the age where we're making a bit more money with our full-time roles. How should you invest these things? I think the default response, you ask any Australian person, house.
Yes.
As soon as I can afford a deposit on a house, I make that like, I save up that enough. I'm buying a house straight away.
Yes.
I am a huge hater.
Oh.
Yeah. And this is not financial advice.
Horns. James, throw in the air horns.
Yeah.
Yo.
No one take this as financial advice. And I particularly am a very neurotic person. I worry about a lot of things.
That makes sense.
Glad we're
it's just an echo chamber. It's just, oh, Justin, what if this happens? Oh, Caleb, what if this happens? We just get nowhere. No, I'm kidding. But
I think property is a really good investment. I think
Yeah.
owning land in particular is very, very good, and very like it's just something that you should, if possible, having in your back pocket is very valuable.
Yeah.
But I think having 100% of your assets, or even a high percentage of your assets, being locked into a mortgage, right? Like a house, I think it closes off a lot of possibilities
Yeah.
and exposes you to a lot of risk, because it ties you down geographically. It locks up a lot of your assets in something that is not very liquid, right? It's not liquid. It's a house. You got to sell it. It's very hard to sell. It takes a while.
It's not liquid. Gotcha. Yeah.
And if something happens, right, if you have to move overseas, this is again me being a bit of a conspiracy theorist. If you have to run away from the country you're in, that becomes suddenly something you have to think really deeply about. You're not very agile, right? If you have all your assets just in cash, say, you can pack up and leave tomorrow. It's fine. But if all of your money is locked in a house,
Yeah. You're done.
you're not done.
Done,
But you got to deal, like you got to deal with whatever. Like, okay, it's like, okay, I'm here now. Do I lose the house, or do I deal with whatever I was trying to run away from?
Yeah.
So that's me. That's me talking. Like, I think for me, like, and again, like, there's a turbulent world. Like,
Yes.
and again, like my last point, you got to think about, you got to play around with these ideas of what if these things happen, right? And then decide from there. And my personal risk tolerance is, you know what, I think if I have like a lot of money, maybe real estate becomes 30%, 20% of my portfolio.
Okay.
And I would have a bunch in, like, I would talk about a personal runway in a sec, but I'll have a bunch in cash. I'll have a bunch of bonds. I would probably have a sizable amount in cryptocurrencies, something like Bitcoin.
Oh,
because
I was gonna bring that. Okay, yeah, gotcha.
Because like
Physical wallet, put in my back pocket, dip. Can I do that?
Yeah, because you run away, like
Right.
it can't be seized.
Yeah.
It can't, like, it's very portable. You just take it. It's like it's available as long as you have your private keys available anywhere in the world. I'm not saying crypto to the moon, like put all your assets in it. I'm saying,
this is a crypto show now. We're crypto bros.
Are we crypto bros now? I'm down, dude. I'm
All right,
down.
this week, shitcoin review. What are we looking at?
Which shitcoin are we looking at today? And then I promised our viewers that they're going to run away. This will not turn into a crypto show.
Yeah. Okay.
But like, there is utility if you look away from all of the fluff and all the scams that are happening in crypto, like, and look at it for what it is. It is an asset that can't be seized and is very portable, right? Which a house can be seized and is not portable. Yeah. And they have their pros and cons. But if you accept our premise that our world is going to go through very big changes, and potentially you would want to run away to another country, or not, maybe to even another state, right? It is valuable to not over-index on, say, real estate, because if you have 6 properties that you've mortgaged in Sydney, it's a big deal if you want to move away from Sydney.
Right. Yeah.
What's your take on that, Cal?
You're blowing my mind right now.
I need a bit of feedback, because this has been playing around in the echo chamber of my mind.
Yes.
Viewers don't like. I know there are a lot of property lovers out there.
Yes.
Don't burn me. I'm not saying property is bad. I'm saying my personal allocation would not sit at 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what was that Wu-Tang member? He said, diversify. Well, I forgot what he said. No, I apologize. I don't really remember. But I think it's always good, right, not to have all your eggs in one basket. Nonetheless, very interesting that you've definitely thought about running away, Justin. What has driven like many of these thoughts? You think where does like many of this have come from?
I think another big. I should have mentioned it in the changing world order. Yeah. I think surveillance states are becoming much more prevalent, right? You have even in the China, obvious like surveillance state. They don't hide it. US is like a lot of democracies are surveillance states as well, right? You have
Yeah.
the Five Eyes.
What's that?
It's five countries. I can't remember. It's like it's the usual suspects that we consider like, oh, like that's me. Like Australia, US, like Canada. I'll look it up. I don't want to spread
Oh, I thought you meant
misinformation.
literally an eye, but like an eye is in like a security eye, like keep an eye on you kind of thing, right?
Yeah. It's Australia, Canada, New Zealand, UK, United States, right? Countries we deem to be, yeah. It's like it's our boys.
Yeah.
And they like
Our boys.
they heavily like monitor like all activity that's done for this done in those countries, like for better or worse.
Yeah.
So they force tech companies to kind of build backdoors for their agencies to like look into. That was the whole Edward Snowden thing.
Yeah.
So your privacy is not very private, right? And I think it's important to not have surveillance states. That's just I don't know if it's a hot take. I feel like it's pretty
No, that's a
fundamental.
cool take. I think that's a cool take. I think everyone can agree. So-
I think everyone can agree surveillance
to some
states are
level.
generally not great.
Yeah.
Also, like there's just say this again. 100% conspiracy theorists. I'd
Bro,
bother.
that's what I was gonna say. This podcast is a little bit conspiracy theorist, and I love it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'm loving
yeah.
this energy, 100%, right?
I talk Jackie and Kerry's ear off about this. I feel bad, but like I'm saying, I was talking the other day. It's like, you know what? If like nuclear war broke out, like, and they nuked Sydney, say, how far away from Sydney would you have to be to be safe? And I was thinking like maybe if you live in like the Gong, like Wollongong, it's like it's still a big city, but like you're probably safe from like the radiation, say. So I don't know if the tensions start building up very high. I might just move to the Gong, man, or like Newcastle.
Yeah, because Sydney is the number one target, man.
Yeah, straight up in Australia. Yeah,
Australia, they gotta go for it, right?
Sydney,
Highest population,
Melbourne.
highest density.
Yeah,
See ya. I'm going to Alice Springs.
yeah. Like fingers crossed it doesn't happen. Like,
Yeah.
please. But again, like I like to play around with these ideas.
Yeah.
And
This
yeah,
is fun. I like it.
I value having a lot of agility, a lot of like the ability to just pack up and move.
Agility.
And,
Software engineer, we get it, bro. Oh my God. Agile this, agile that. I'm sick of it. No, I'm kidding.
another like tangential point.
Yeah.
Is the idea of like your lifestyle runway. It's if you stop working right now, how long could you last? So that's a factor of like how much cash you have.
Yeah.
And also how much you spend, say, per month, right? So I think if you think things are going to be very stable, if it's like the 1950s or whatever, 1950s in Australia, and you think smooth sailing, you probably want less liquid assets and more in investments. Because your money's going to make more money. It's good. But if you expect things to be things to be changing up a long time, you want to protect yourself from these things, right? Maybe you lose your job, or maybe you have to uproot and run away, or maybe I don't know, like you just got like having a long buffer. The bigger your buffer, the more you protect yourself.
Yeah.
So in general, again, if you accept this premise that the world is going to be very tumultuous, then you should calculate your runway and build it up bigger than you normally would. Like have less in investments and more in liquid assets.
I think a lot of people already, like obviously this is the extreme of it, and we were just playing with these hypotheticals and thinking about these interesting scenarios, right? But like, I think a lot of people are already doing something like to some capacity. A lot of this, right? I feel like the second you start saving, it's like obviously like your entry level. I mean, like that's the same attitude, and all we're talking about is just taking that attitude that you're already doing and kind of like just putting a bit more thought into it. I mean, not you know what I mean? I'm like, just so that I'm grounding what we're talking about a little bit, just so it's like it's not so high level. It's like, no, you guys do this already. It's like it's just more of that, right? It's putting more effort into that and not just being like, let me just throw it in the savings. You probably have like a really good, I think a lot of people our age already have like really good saving habits, but it's like now take the next step. Okay, where do they go, right? That's something I'm struggling with, and that's something that I think a lot of people are still like kind of getting to terms with. But
Mm.
yeah, it's just more of that. So I just want it to be not as foreign, right? Because we can go off the deep end a little bit. But
We're going very abstract right now, right?
yeah,
I love that. Thank you for grounding it, Cal. Like, yeah, you've already got all of these saving habits, probably. I guess just the idea that I wanted to throw out to our listeners is, I think by default, it's okay. Everything that goes into money, maybe you build up a bit of an emergency fund, but then like everything else goes into like investments,
save for a
and
house,
then
something like that.
save for a house, and then you put it all in these assets. I just wanted to bring up the idea that maybe you want to build up more of a buffer if you expect things to be very turbulent. I keep using that word, but it's because I can't think of a synonym.
Can't think of pull up the thesaurus right now. Pull up the thesaurus right now. We're gonna lay out like 5 more words so we don't kill them with the turbulence, the turmoil. Because I can't think of any as well. I cannot help you in this regard. I'm stuck at those 3 as well, man. What do we got? Just
bumpy, unstable.
Bumpy.
That's a very
like
down to earth one. Bumpy.
Yeah.
It's a nice word.
Yeah.
Tempestuous. That's a fancy one.
Oh.
Stormy, chaotic, lawless, raucous.
Raucous. Okay.
We've got a few to work
times. Yeah, all right. Leave that list up there. I'm gonna pull up as well just in case
Yes,
I do that. Tempestuous. No, that's good. Yeah, I think it's not that foreign, right? And we're really just saying take it one step further and be a bit more mindful of where your savings do go. And yeah, it's just a continuation of what you probably already do, what you guys are already doing. Like, I'm sure it's like very responsible to be setting up a little bit of an emergency fund, right? That's like baby steps, right? Kind of what I'm doing right now, just in case. What happens if I lose my job? Like, those are some things that I think most people definitely tend to think about if you want to be safe. But yeah,
straight up,
interesting.
Because mathematically, right, it's like I feel like a lot of like my types, like I used to think like this. It's like, oh, you just gotta put all of your money into like these investments, and mathematically in like 60 years I will be much richer than someone who only put 50%, right?
Yes.
So that's the type of person I was, but like I guess that's a very naive way to think of the world, because you don't think about
what could happen. You just assume the 60 years like smooth sailing, baby.
Smooth sailing, right? And then, but you don't think about the cost associated with what if you need that money right now. Maybe you're actually, if you don't have that buffer, you've got to pull it out of your savings, or maybe you can't even. And it's a very expensive. It becomes very expensive if you don't have that buffer protecting you.
Yeah, man. Life is not always like just planned out, and that's what I'm struggling with right now. I'm always like, oh, let me try this for the next few months. Save this much, save that much, but things come up, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I need to be a bit more flexible there. I'm struggling straight up with just like my savings in general.
What if a family member needs a surgery, right?
Exactly.
That's a very expensive thing to not do or to delay because you don't have like the assets, like the liquid asset to pay for it.
Exactly.
So moving off of this topic, because I feel like it's it's been.
We reached the end.
Yeah. Okay. When we're entering tempestuous times, another thing that I think is we've already touched on it, that is immensely transferable are social skills, right? And I think they become one of the most important things when things get unstable. I was watching All of Us Are Dead the other day, right? The new Korean zombie show. Yes. Spoilers, but it's a small thing. It's like there was this girl in the class, and then she did something pretty horrid, but then and she ended up locking herself in a storeroom somewhere, and then all of her classmates enter it as well. They're full hungry, they haven't drank water in a while, and then but she's in the storeroom with a whole bunch of supplies, and then as she's about to open the door, save them, like get them some food and everything, they full start talking shit about her. They like start trashing her, like this bitch, this bitch, that. And true, very true, she was a horrible person. But that's not the go, right? You gotta stay compassionate. You gotta not like ruffle too many feathers, like especially in turbulent times. In stormy times, in choppy times, because you never know, like when you need someone's help, right? Yeah. She ended up just locking the door and not opening it.
And they all died.
They spoilers. I'm not gonna talk about it, but they didn't get the food that they
Yes.
would have appreciated in that moment.
They didn't get the supplies. Okay, interesting.
Another one was there was
Yeah.
this guy, this bully, and he's like other bully, but there was a more of a bully. The boss bully, kind of like it was being quite mean to this other bully.
Yeah.
Even in when they were in this apocalypse situation.
Yeah.
And it was being a bit of a prick. And then that's not the go in this kind of situation, right? So the other guy betrayed him, he got eaten by zombies. So like you gotta stay. So what I'm talking about in terms of social skills is you gotta learn to work with people. You gotta be like, you gotta stay, have the right mindset. You gotta stay very analytical, very like on your toes, but at the same time still have a deep compassion, I think, for other people.
I love that.
Because you never know, is the main thing I wanted to get across.
So like you might think, because in this case they're like, oh man, this biatch, but you never know. She was the one like holding the key to their food supplies. We'll say that. We'll leave it there. But yeah, no, I love that. I mean, we were discussing our core values the other day, and I think that the big one that came up for me was just compassion, right, and trying to learn to live with more of that. So no, that rings super true and very close to my heart as well. I think as engineers and people in this line of work, I think we can get a little carried away with the analytics sometimes. You can get so number crunching, and then just forget the people behind the numbers or whatever it is that we're looking at, right? And the human element to so many things, so many of these issues.
I'm going to throw something out there, Cal.
Go for it.
I'll give you a second to think.
Yeah.
What is your number one toxic trait that would get you eaten in a zombie apocalypse? Because I can tell you I can tell you mine. All right. You have a think, but my one is, I think, my need to be right. I think often I will I'll get very heated. I'll be like, no, I'm right. You're wrong. And I'll get very invested in that argument. When sometimes it doesn't matter. And the best thing to do would have just been to like, you know what? We have a difference of opinions. That is completely fine.
Water under the bridge.
Yeah, like you've got like your experience that leads you to that conclusion. I've got mine.
Yes.
Just let it go.
Yeah.
I find it very hard to do that sometimes, and something I'm working on. But I think that would get me eaten in a zombie apocalypse.
Very interesting. I have a feeling. Is this because you watched it? There was a character exhibited this kind of behavior. You're like, oh wow, that spoke to me a little bit too closely, or was this something just completely? You just completely came out with it yourself.
No, I just came up with it myself. I think it's just a toxic
imagination.
It's my strongest toxic trait.
Damn, bro. I think for me, ooh, I don't know. This is hard.
What would it be?
This is hard. What are some common ones? Because I feel like you're very well versed in this like zombie genre. So like, come on, share some context with us. Inspire us a little bit.
Being too naive, I think, is a big one.
Yes.
It's like,
I was thinking about that.
Yeah. I think potentially being a prick, obvious one.
Yep.
Other ones is being too much of a follower, not thinking for yourself.
Yes.
I guess that's related to being naive. I think being selfish is probably a big one. But I think there's a balance there, right? Because at times you gotta think, I gotta put me first.
Yes.
But at the same time, you can't be too selfish.
Yep.
You've got to have that like honor, because I don't know. Like I've seen a lot of movies where people with no honor, get their good riddance at the end.
This shameless, like this spineless, like character just wrecked.
Yeah.
I think you know what's funny. Because I feel like we've had a similar conversation. I've had a similar conversation with Kelly as well about this. And I feel like you two meeting would be the funniest thing, just because if you asked her,
I've met Kelly.
if you get to talk to her about this, like, Kelly, what are you gonna do in this situation? Like, if you gave her the same grilling that you gave Jackie and Kerry, you'd be like, I'll die. I'll just jump off a building and kill myself. This is too much stress. She literally says, anytime an apocalypse comes out, I want to die first. That is her game plan. And I'm like, you know what? I respect that, man. Like, stop it. This world is not for you anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, why stress yourself out, man? Life is too difficult now. I'm like, I love that. I
think that could potentially be a toxic trait. It is. I'm no disrespect, Kelly. I respect you, but I don't know. I feel like there's a big difference between when you're in that situation
Yeah.
and saying like, yeah, like saying it now. It's like, you know what? I just died because I don't want to think about it.
Yes,
And
yeah,
being
yeah.
in this situation and be like, you know what? I'll die, because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people would kind of change their tone. Then it's like, once they're confronted with like, you know what? I
Yeah.
kind of don't want to die. Death is
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
scary.
For sure. Yeah. But I think she was like, I'd rather be one of the first ones to be eaten. I feel like the anxiety of having to figure out who's been eaten or who's been bitten, and then like playing this game of like, oh my God, I have to let go of the person I love because he's been bitten and stuff like that. She's like, nope, too much stress for me. Bite me
That's
first, let me out. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that. That's one way about it. I think I have a feeling it might be something along the lines of naivety. It probably is around there, just because I think, like we was talking about just now, like compassion is a huge core value of mine, and maybe sometimes it blinds me a little bit. I'm like, and it runs me a little bit, like off road in terms of, we gotta help them. We gotta help them all, bro. We'll figure it out. Like in the movies, we'll figure out a cure. I'm not gonna kill him. I'll defy all odds and somehow like help this guy out. And then in reality, I'm the one that's gonna get everyone messed up. I open the door because I missed my friend or something like that. Guys, I really miss him, man. Please don't let him be eaten. And then I'm gonna get everyone killed. We're all gonna be zombies. But hey, what if we just all become zombies and we just chill together? Like, what is the harm in that, bro? Far out.
Being chilling together.
Yeah. We become the apex predators. What if I just become the
True.
zombie and I just start messing with you?
That is true.
Their lives feel very like stress free. You know, they just run around and bite the shit out of people.
No exams.
No exams, bro, man. You know what? Maybe I'm just a bit stressed out right now. That's all I can think of. But no, I feel like that might be a good candidate for my greatest toxic trait. Probably just like freaking guys. I think he's telling the truth. I don't think he's been bitten. It's like all messed up. Guys, he's my best friend. You don't know him.
He said Justin said he wasn't bitten.
Yeah,
he's good. I'm sat there like
bro, straight up, man. No, bite mark on your arm, full visible.
Yeah.
No, I didn't, bro. This is just a scratch. I fell over or something like that.
Yeah.
No,
I bit myself.
Oh yeah, true. I don't know. I'm too attached sometimes. I think I'm too emotional in that sense. Probably my worst one.
All right, and to finish off on another more funny one, we've gone into some pretty dank topics today, but the last one I've got is when you're going through choppy times, I reckon it's important to know how to fight, man.
Yeah. Oh my God, I got something for you, man. Like,
yeah.
It's just. We have a friend who does MMA, right?
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and he's more of a coach as well. He teaches it, and so his life is very much around the martial arts and things like that. And we were hanging out one time, and we were talking about our troubles with our bosses, and it's like, my boss is not paying the most or paying me what I deserve or something like. I think that's what one of our friends were mentioned, and what this MMA friend brought up was just that. Just bash him. And I love how simple the solution was. He was like, you know what? Bring him to the MMA gym, go for a couple rounds, like lay it on him. And then it was so funny because he was like, he had a story like loaded. He was like, yeah, my mate did it. Like, and he really hyped it up to make it sound like, it turned out well. So like, my mate did it. Brought his boss that was like really being mean to him and like not paying him what he deserved. Brought him to the gym, rolled with him, sparred with him, or whatever like that, and like beat him up. Got his little satisfaction out. Yeah. And then at the end of the time, he was like, and then he lost his job. I was like, oh my Lord.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. I'm like, I think that was what I expected, but I thought, I gave him the benefit of that. It was just so funny that he kind of led us down this path just to tell us like. And he's like, what? You know what? There's a satisfaction. I'm like, I respect that.
That is true.
I like that. You kept it simple, man. Freaking someone disrespecting you. He was like,
just fight him.
Fight him, bro. I'm like, wow.
Amazing.
It caught me left field, hard left field. But I'm assuming that's where you're kind of going with this. It's just like being more. Is it like self-sufficient, self-resilient kind of thing? Being more tough.
Oh, no, not really.
Oh, I completely missed it.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna go in a different direction, but I
Yeah.
do like that story. um, now, I was just thinking, like, when you enter like high stress situations, if you expect things to get violent at all, right? Like, just say with like protests or whatever, right? Like police brutality and whatnot. I feel that not being able to fight, like not having been in those situations before, of those high pressure situations, you're actually a lot more jumpy because this is kind of how it plays out in my mind. It's like you've never fought anyone before. You enter into a confrontation, maybe like someone's broken into in the zombie apocalypse, someone's broken into your house and they're trying to steal your eggs, right? And
Yeah.
you don't want them to
Like
steal your eggs. What like you may be tempted to do if you've never fought someone before is you need the first strike because you don't have the confidence that you'll win or to handle yourself. So the only way I'm going to win is if I strike first.
Act
And
rationally.
yeah, you just get, you've never been in that situation before, right? So you can't compute it properly. You can't evaluate it properly. So you might just like be overly violent, or you may be like, you may be over violent is what I'm trying to say. But once you actually have some experience with confrontation, with fighting under your belt, you can more properly evaluate it. It's like, okay, like, do I have to fight this person now, or can I just back off and like leave them to do like what they can do? Like, you're not under a delusion.
Yes.
I think it's the main thing. It's like if someone is twice your size, could lift you up with one arm, maybe you don't fight that person. Maybe you don't even try to fight that person. Maybe they just they take your eggs.
Yeah, you give the eggs. Forfeit the eggs, guys.
Yeah. Just take the eggs, bro. Like, here's a bottle of
Maybe
water.
give him some more than that as well.
Yeah.
Make sure he doesn't come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Get on good terms with him.
And you can just better evaluate your situation. You can, I think, if you know how to fight, you actually walk away from a lot more confrontations than you would if you don't know how to fight. Because if you don't know how to fight, the options are roll over or go crazy, right? That's the two options. There's no in between. So that's the main reason. I think learning to fight actually makes you less violent in confrontational situations.
I like that. That's cool. I 100% agree with that. It's just like, especially, and I'm only speaking from my experience in high school. You know, I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover. I'm a bit of a lover. I'm kind of on that side.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. That's my excuse, right? But 100%, man, not being able to. So weird, but this is when I was like really, really young, year 7, year 8 kind of thing, and I was like, man, like I was a bit jealous that some of my friends had been in like brawls and this and that, because I feel like with that experience, they were a bit more. They kind of knew what was going on. If kind of things hit the fan, they didn't just panic and freeze or whatnot, right? They actually knew, okay, what's the best way through this, because they've kind of gone through the tough times. And I was like, man, that feels like something I'm missing. And I've never gotten that up until this point, and I've been blessed enough to be able to just dodge every single confrontation in that case. But it's something that I don't really feel safe about, right? It's like, man, maybe I should like start what is that freaking BJJ with you, and like kind of just feel a bit more confident with myself, in myself. Just you 100%, man. I feel so jumpy in those scenarios. Like, I mean, back in high school when things got a little rough, I was always like extremely nervous, and like people would be like, yeah, I'll jump in, I'll fight, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to fight, guys. I've been studying the past like 2 weeks, man.
I got tutor, bro. Sorry.
I gotta go tutor. I'm serious, and I'm like, wow, I'd love to be like, because it feels like really brotherhood type, like for the boys. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I gotta head to tutor, man. My mom's gonna kill me if I get in there. So I've never really figured that out, and it's always been like, yes, like super anxious, and sometimes like even just being out at night, man, like at a bar or at a club when certain people get a little too drunk and they get angry, and you can kind of feel tension rise. Sometimes you're like, oh, is like a fight gonna break out here? Like, do I need to move away? I get super scared, right? I get jumpy, exactly like how you described it. Whereas I'm assuming in your situation, if I hang around with you, it's like you already know, you can evaluate because you actually understand like the vectors that go into this scenario and how you can get out of it the best, right? I can't. My brain just goes like kind of, yeah, it's fight or flight. I'm about to run. I'm about to run. I apologize to all my friends who are out there, but like, yeah, I just don't know any way to process it.
And again, like, I just like, just say you were at a party or something, right? And your friend got a little bit too drunk, or maybe your uncle got a little bit too drunk. You don't want to like, and he's been a bit of a nuisance. Like, you don't want to okay, if you don't know how to fight, if you don't know how to grapple, like your option is like leave him alone, like let him do whatever he's doing, or like knock his teeth out, right? Like,
I'm sorry. Yeah, call me on guard. I didn't realize that was another option. My uncle. Yeah.
Like you don't have an in between, but if you
Yeah.
know how to grapple someone,
Yeah.
right, you can like not like you can restrain them without like hurting them. So I think learning to fight, a lot of it, like it just gives you lets you evaluate things better and gives you a more options. Like gives you an in between the two extremes. And if I'm going to recommend martial arts, MMA is king. If you can do like go to an MMA gym and do everything like grappling, striking, wrestling, but most people don't have the time to do that.
Yeah.
I think do any martial art that has pressure tests, right? And what I mean by that is live sparring somehow.
Oh
So,
yeah.
Like I know like some karates, I can't remember which one, but they do live sparring. Boxing, there's live sparring. BJJ, there's live sparring. There's a lot of the ones that do live sparring actually teach you to act in confrontational scenarios. Things that are just completely you're punching the air, just kia.
Forms.
Yeah, forms. Not ideal.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Because I think because I did martial arts for a long time. I did Shaolin for like a really long time when I was a lot younger. And they'll definitely, I remember like in the beginning or for the most part of it, I just did forms, right? Like because it's more of a performing art. It's more of like a dance. But then towards the end, we started doing a lot more live sparring. And honestly, it did make me, this is another toxic trait. But I remember when I was young, like after having sparred and exactly what you're saying, and I only held on to this feeling and of confidence for a very short time because I left right after, right? But we did a lot of sparring, and I was like, man, I wish someone would start with me right now.
Oh no.
So bad. I was like just full of like testosterone, like super young. Like, man, like now I feel so confident, and I only did that for a little while, but I've completely lost that. And I just remember that one period where like I think me and my brother, we would spar a lot and like get a lot of training in and like do a bit of boxing on the side as well. And yeah, it was so funny. And this is super young, like in primary school. I wish someone would try to fight me right now. And I'm like, because I'll knock your teeth out.
Yes, sir.
So bad, please, so bad. But yeah, I totally get where you're coming from.
And just to cap it off, like I don't want to sell martial arts as a panacea, right? Because you solve one problem, you solve this jumpiness by learning martial arts.
Yeah.
You might develop another problem, which is your ego gets a bit too big. You kind of want to start like fights with people, right? So one solution leads to another problem. You got to solve that problem, like. But you keep solving problems, you eventually get to a new place. But if you learn martial arts, don't be a prick. Like keep your ego in check. If someone has a knife, your 10 years of martial arts might not matter so much anymore.
Dip. Yeah. There's no shame in dipping. In cases like that, I totally get it.
All right, that was a really fun podcast, Kao. Let's finish off with our song recommendations.
Yeah, go for it. What is this? Well, this is some wild stuff.
This is from an anime that I'm watching, actually. It's the second opening of Osama Ranking, King's Ranking, or Ranking of Kings.
Oh, yeah.
Highest rated show this season and last season. It's amazing, right? It looks very childish. Its art style is like kind of that Doraemon, like that very like childish style.
It's like simple.
Very simple.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a very mature show. Very like
30-second pitch.
It's the fun. This is the story I tell when I pitch it because it's hard to explain the story
I think
itself.
I heard it before, but yeah.
But when I was watching the show with Jackie, one of my housemates, and we were watching it, and then we got up to episode 9, and then our housemate comes back, Kerry, and he's like, "Oh, who's the bad guy in this show?" I legitimately sat there and I was like, "Damn, bro, I don't know who the bad guy is."
Yeah.
And I've been watching this for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's a very complex show. It's like people have their own motivations, right?
Yeah.
In real life, there is no bad guy, and a big part of the theme is to not judge people by first impressions, by how they look, because there's a lot of people who fit, like a lot of characters that fit these caricatures that you normally expect, and it turns out they are not that at all. On the surface, they look like that, but they are generally they're completely different. So very, very good show. I love it.
That's right. I remember.
And this second opening is a bop, because first opening it's very like that, it misleads you. It's like that very kiddie like vibe, but this one just switches it up, becomes a lot more shonen, a lot more grittier, and it's an amazing song. I love it.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
But that's my anime pitch for the week.
Yes. No. Thank you. My one's gonna be. Oh, I've been listening to a lot of Vietnamese music. So that's the thing.
Excellent.
I've been coming back to my roots, and then hoping that maybe I can relearn some of the Vietnamese just by listening to it. But this song's called Đưa Em Về. Oh shit.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Vietnamese for this one.
Yes, sir.
It's by someone named TIA.
TIA.
It's just one of those things where I think it's generally pop music. So I think
we'll put it in the description.
Throw it in the description, right? But I think there are elements to it that are universal. Pop music, right? You know what I mean? You could be Korean, you could be whatever. Like it could be English, it could be Vietnamese, and it's a bit of a banger. But yeah, if you're feeling like a little Mr. International, want to listen to some Vietnamese,
Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide, yeah. Đưa Em Về, right?
You seem very cultured, right? Because a lot of people listen to Japanese music, a lot of people listen to Korean, Chinese music to a lesser extent, but no one's on that V-pop.
Bro, I'm a bit of a trendsetter. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Where you get this from? You said yes, sir. I like this.
I don't remember.
I like that. No, but it's really good. Check it out.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Cal, for being on the podcast with me. Super fun. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Bye-bye.